Hey everyone, John from Nintendo Life here. And what do you think when I throw out names like Gunstar Heroes, Radiant Silvergun, Ikaruga? You probably think crazy, over-the-top nonsense, but once upon a time in the year 2000, Nintendo said, hey, I want some of that. And they collaborated with Treasure to make Sin and Punishment, and that has just been re-released again on Nintendo Switch Online. And to talk a bit about it, I am joined with Alex.
Get bonus!
And I'm joined by Xeon.
When you asked, what do you get when you get those games, I just wanted to yell, treasure, 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 so bad.
You should
into
have.
the mic, but I realized it wasn't my time yet. But hello.
Hello. So, this game released only in Japan on N64 originally, and then got re-released on Wii Virtual Console, where it was met with a big fanfare. But it's always been one of those elusive N64 games that fans love, but the general population has just never had a chance to try. It has been on Wii and Wii U, but I feel like this is the most accessible form it's ever been in. So we've all just played through Sin and Punishment, or at least played through a chunk of it for some of us. I think, Xeon, you even streamed this the other day, right?
I did, yeah. I didn't make it all the way through. I will finish streaming it at some point, even because it's a short game. But yeah, I only streamed for like an hour. But
it's just over an hour long, so you are pretty close to the end. And it's an outrageous game. I think what makes it so special to me is what it can do on the N64. Like, you look at all these other games, which they slow down a lot of N64 games. But Sin and Punishment is this crazy, ambitious game with explosions everywhere. It's always moving forward. It's dynamically changing between cutscenes and gameplay. And somehow, it's smooth as heck. How'd they do that?
do you know, I was asking this kind of the other day in the stream, but do you know if this game uses the expansion pack at all by chance? I was going to look that up, but you bringing up how smooth it is.
Yeah, I don't think it does. I think this is a native, just raw N64 kind of
That's
thing.
wild. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Like, it really doesn't feel like anything else on the system, especially when you start comparing it to other games. Like, graphically speaking, it kind of reminds me a bit of Final Fantasy VIII, and like the enemies, like the soldiers that you're fighting, kind of remind me a lot of the Bam Blam. I don't, not the Bam Blam or whatever that, not the school that you're part of, but it feels somewhat reminiscent of that. Even like Final Fantasy IX's art style kind of draws a little bit of a comparison here to that. But yeah, it's such an action-packed thrill ride. Like, every single part of the game is just constantly throwing like a new gameplay mechanic at you, or just these weird new story beats that like don't always make sense, but you still like are curious to see what happens next. It feels like a movie at times. It's so insane that this game released on the N64.
Yeah, I've played through this game a ton now, and I still don't know what's going on in the story. But I'm kind of curious to know what Alex thinks, though. This is his first rodeo with Sin and Punishment.
It is, yes. We said that we would do this little chatteroony here, and I completely forgot that we were recording until Xeon was like, "Hey, you ready to record?" That's how Xeon sounds like when he's got it, when he's not on microphone. And
I also just woke up, so it's there's a lot.
Did,
my voice has to develop in the morning, so.
But I started playing like I think like an hour before we started recording that, so I've basically played the whole game. And you know what? It's really good fun. I like you, John. I have no idea what was going on. I assumed it's because I skipped one cutscene and missed something really vital. But I'm guessing that it's just no. It's just completely crazy madcap nonsense. Like, I don't know what any of the characters' names are. I think one's called like Aaron or something.
You should know Saki. They were an assist trophy in Brawl. They're the ones that kind of fly around and shoot everywhere.
Oh, are they from Sin and Punishment?
Yeah.
Well, there you have it. Do you even play as that one? Is Saki the like magical like 11 character that's definitely not the same as Stranger Things?
So Saki is the one you play as right at the start. The guy.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah, I am so underprepared for this. I have no idea.
I don't think you can ever be that prepared for the story. I as I said, I've played it through a few times before, and it's nuts. I don't want to spoil the ending because it's bonkers.
Well, I thought I'd reached the ending when Saki, I think the first guy, that's the cutscene I skipped where all of a sudden I was suddenly playing as some sort of giant. I thought it was a mech, and then they were like, "Oh no, Saki's transformed or something." So I was like,
you made it to the anime
so
part.
Yeah.
It's the same. I thought, okay, so this is the end of the game. That really is short, and then it just carried on.
Just keeps going.
Admittedly, not for very long, but you know.
It gets very Evangelion with not only the mechs, but just the way it ends is like end of Evangelion kind of stuff. You know what's weird, though?
Don't know what that is, John.
That's, I didn't expect you to. That's okay. But
Is it like Star Wars?
yeah, why not? Yeah,
There we go, okay.
Yeah, sure.
It's just like the end of Star Wars.
Sure, yeah. What's weird though is the game is in English, like, or the dub is spoken in the English language, but the game never got released here.
I was just like, when the voices started coming on, I saw like some Japanese text at one point, and I was like, oh yeah, whatever. And then the voices came in, and I was like, well, one, voice acting on the N64, that's damned impressive. Two, hang on, this game didn't release in this country, which is why I'm seeing all this bloody Japanese, but I'm hearing English. What happened? What is this game? I mean, don't get me wrong, I had a blast, and the control scheme is like, well, I was about to say like 10 years ahead of its time, but when did Halo come out with like properly like cemented twin sticks? I know Halo wasn't the first twin stick shooter. I mean, Sin and Punishment came beforehand. It's technically not twin stick, but very reminiscent of that. It's very ahead of its time, and it took me like a good, I don't know where the levels start and end, but like I would say 4 or 5 levels to find out there was a jump button. I got hit by a lot of attacks that I just thought I couldn't miss.
I have some questions actually about this, because I've been playing with the N64 controller, and that's the only way I've ever really played. And so with that, you hold the D-pad to move, and then use the analog stick to aim. So you sort of hold it on the left side and the middle side. How does that work on a standard controller?
Well, so you use the D-pad to move, and then the thing that I kept getting tripped up on was that then the left analog stick on the Pro Controller also controls your aiming. So I kept naturally trying to use both the joysticks, or the analog
so
sticks.
did I.
And you can't, it makes it, because then you're just controlling your aim, your reticle instead, and so you have to use the D-pad, and then the standard R button is jump, and then I think ZR is shoot, and then you can target onto enemies by pressing the B or the A button maybe when you're not shooting.
What's with the homing? Is it the same amount of damage, because everything just seems to have like standard hit points, but it's like, hey, you got a homing one, which I didn't use super often, admittedly, but sometimes I did. Like when there was this mouse thing jumping over these pillars. That was irritating to shoot, and some eyeballs like flashing up on the screen and then explosions. I had to avoid them.
The control scheme and the actual gameplay itself is basically the exact same as Kid Icarus Uprising's flight sections. So for those who have played that game and didn't like the on-foot parts, you'll love this. It's literally the same. When an enemy's close to you, if you just tap the shoot button, you'll melee them, which is exactly what Pit does in that game too.
I liked that.
Yeah,
I haven't
great.
played Kid Icarus Uprising, but I liked that in this game. It was just like, enemies close, just take your finger off the trigger for a second, slam it back down, and you've sliced that mother in, well, sometimes half. Do they slice in half?
I think they can do. And you can also deflect missiles back at them with the melee.
Can you?
Yeah.
Oh, bloody hell. I've been avoiding these big sort of torpedo-looking missiles that are traveling strangely slowly for something that's supposed to be like flying through the air, as I'm on a broken piece of debris that some gifted child has ripped from a plane or something. I don't know. It was very... It wasn't exactly... There wasn't a single moment where it dragged or that something exciting wasn't happening. But by the same token, I have zero idea what the grander plot is. Like, I don't know what the child's called. I don't know. I swear the voice acting for the character you play second, the voice actors seem to change at one point. Is that a thing?
I don't know.
Or am
about
I just
that,
like?
I wouldn't be surprised.
I'm not sure, but yeah, I want to go back and see if I noticed this as well.
It was just one cutscene. Like they needed to do a retake, and the original voice actor wasn't around, so they got someone that, I'll be honest, didn't even really sound much like them. I could be completely wrong about this, but I was just like, hang on, I thought I was playing as a woman, like from the voice actor before, and then they suddenly started sounding a bit like a man trying to sound like a woman.
I do think the voice acting is kind of hit or miss from time to time. I think
I think it's just miss.
Well, I think it
in a
still
beautiful
does.
way. Don't get me wrong; it is thoroughly entertaining. But there is nothing like something dramatic happens and the characters go, ah,
Sure.
especially tiny child.
But I think this was like, this was a different time here too, where I think it was just even impressive to see this much like voice acting on a Nintendo 64 game in general. I remember when this game released, at least in the US on the Wii, I think it was actually, normally N64 games were $10, and this for some reason was $12, and maybe it was to recoup missed cost, or cost that they thought they were going to miss out on because it wasn't going to sell as well or something like that. But I remember when this came out, I was like, this is not. I understand they're marketing this as an N64 game, but I didn't believe the fact that it actually came out on Nintendo 64 and not in America for having voice acting and everything. I was so impressed by it, but maybe it was that I was also taken back by just the entire like flow and gameplay of the game, because it really doesn't feel like anything else on the system. I think I look at the voice acting is weird and it's not great, but I think I just appreciate, like you said, I think there's maybe I have a different appreciation for it beyond the fact that it's I'm not looking at its quality. I'm looking at the fact that there's voice acting in this N64 game and it feels like I'm watching a movie, or I'm a part of a movie,
I think it's just non-stop bonkers. It's always moving forward. And we're saying like there's no other games like it on the system, and there really aren't. Like, I guess if you want to like compare other rail shooters like Star Fox 64, like that game also has voice acting, but it's far more limited. And that's also a much slower game compared to this. Whereas in this, it feels like you are in an actual world rather than just sort of soaring through from the sky. Sometimes you are in the sky, but it just goes all over the place at all times. It's crazy. In a lot of ways, I think I actually do prefer this to Star Fox 64. Like, they're different games, you shouldn't really compare them that much, but I feel like this just... It breaks the concept of what a rail shooter can even be. It just feels like sometimes you are side-scrolling around, sometimes you're moving on the ground, sometimes you're in the sky. It doesn't know where it wants to go, and I love how dynamic it can be with that.
Doesn't it feel kind of weird to call it a rail shooter? Because to me, it feels like so much more than that. Because like you were saying, how I guess Kid Icarus Uprising could be also called a rail shooter, but only for the fact that you are, you're being kind of put in this direction, and you're running the whole time, right? Like you don't get to stop and soak in the areas. But in that regard, the game, and I think that's why it feels so much like a movie, is because all of the scenes are set up so meticulously, and every area you're here for a certain amount of time, and then you move on to the next, and the game is constantly throwing new elements at you. Like when I think Alex said he made it to this part, but the part with the pillars and the little like carbuncle style mouse rat bunny thing that was like running around, in the middle of the pillars. I think it's
like Lena or something, or Leda.
Leda, I think is what it is. I kept calling it Lena when I was streaming the other night, so I think it is Leda. I think you're right. But that it took me a little bit to like understand that I had to jump and slash the enemy,
sure.
and then I
is
think
that
like.
what you did?
I think that's
I was just jumping
point.
around with the lock on, desperately trying to get as many hits as I could in before it went round and disappeared again, and I had to wait for it to come back round. All the while trying to avoid the eyes splashing me with splash damage.
Sure. Well, it's cool because what I found out was that was working best for me was I would jump and slash, and then when it would start to run back around like counterclockwise again, I would start to run clockwise, and I would still hide behind the pillars, but I would get like just like a bit not ahead of it, but I would get
you'd cut it off essentially.
Yeah, yep, and then I would jump back up and slash it again, and I didn't figure that out right away, but it was just a bit of trial and error, right? And it's cool because the game has so much of that soaked in here. Like even then, shortly after this part, I think there's a part where you're kind of like jumping. You're running forward, but you actually have to jump over platforms. So now it becomes a platformer, but then you also have to dodge these pillars as you're running while also simultaneously attacking an enemy. And I was like, what is happening right now? It felt like the game was constantly innovating upon its own just like simple ideas. And because now at that point, then I realized that maybe I should start auto-targeting the enemy and attacking instead, so that way I could just focus on my jumping instead. And yeah, it just feels like every part of the game is not completely different, because it still is the same idea, but it's really using its tool set so well, I think. But
I feel like this game elevates the N64. Like, when you think about this platform, it's usually quite a limited lineup. Like, everyone mentions the same games, like Mario 64, Ocarina of Time, Smash, GoldenEye, Banjo. It's always the same sort of lineup.
Wet Tricks.
Of course. And like, there is a diverse library out there, but the common hitters are the ones that everyone has already played. Whereas Sin and Punishment is something that's not only different because we didn't get it here in the West, but it's totally different to any other game on the platform, or any game from that era. And when you think of ambitious games, like even on the PlayStation, games that push boundaries, they generally haven't aged that well technically, but Sin and Punishment, like sure, it's blocky, all the models are very low poly, sure, but in terms of performance and playability, it still feels remarkably modern.
It does. I mean, this is one of those games, it's bizarre because there are so many elements about it that sound completely nonsensical. Like, it doesn't make any sense in theory, and it sounds like the sort of game that somebody would mention on the playground. Oh, no, did you know there's this secret N64 game? It only came out in Japan. It's got English voices in it, and it's like a shooting game, but you hold the controller the opposite way that you usually do, and you like aim around with the stick, and you fire, and you jump, and there's all these explosions, and there's like a special child with psychic powers, and you attack all these people, and then you fight this mouse that can talk.
Are you not talking about Smash Bros, Alex? This sounds a lot like Smash Bros to me. You said there's a mouse, a psychic kid.
Oh, for a moment I was like, mouse? What the hell is that? Oh, Pikachu. And Pichu.
Hey.
Is Pichu a mouse?
That's a question.
It should be. It should be.
I think it's a baby mouse, if we want to be specific. You
Is that
know what a baby
is that
mouse
a different
looks like,
species
right?
to mouse?
A pinky
Yeah,
is
I
a
think
baby
so.
mouse. Did you guys know that? A baby mouse is called a pinky.
Oh,
Really? Oh,
Yep,
I
because
have
it's
heard
pink.
because they don't have. Yeah.
And I only know this because that's what you feed snakes.
Yeah.
They're really young. You feed them pinkies, and then you give them larger and larger mice as they age. And sometimes you move on to rats, but my snake you don't,
The more you know.
because she's too small.
Oh.
If you made it this far into the video, please put an F in the chat for all the pinkies that were lost to all the snakes in the world. Did you know that Sin and Punishment, according to Wikipedia, Sin and Punishment was originally supposed to be called Glass Soldier because the main character was fragile like glass.
You say that. Have you ever had like one of those big Pyrex dishes that you put in like 240-degree ovens to roast potatoes, and it's just like, whatever, and it like bounces if you drop it? Do not drop your Pyrex. It can bounce, but it probably won't. But, tempered glass is hard as balls. Very hard balls, like bowling balls.
So are you saying it should have been called like Tempered Glass Soldier or Thin Glass Soldier? Like it should. That's probably why they changed the name. Honestly, Alex, I think you're onto something.
I think
here.
I've hit the nail on the tempered glass head.
Interesting fact, though, Xeon.
Thanks.
We should probably talk about the emulation a little bit, because I'm sure it's going to be part of the comments. The emulation on N64 does differ from game to game. Some games are fine, other games have slight problems. I think Sin and Punishment's great, though. I didn't encounter any kind of emulation problems.
I couldn't bear the input lag. It was atrocious.
This is the kind of game where input lag would be a big deal, though, especially on hard mode. But no, it felt fine for me.
Yeah, I've not found any issues. Admittedly, I've not played the original game on the N64, so I can't say whether it runs better or worse. But I must say that I was impressed at the quality of the textures. I mean, they weren't good by modern standards, don't get me wrong. But, for the N64, blimey, some of those were proper lookers.
Yeah, I think seeing everything sharpened up didn't do it a disservice on the Nintendo Switch Online expansion pack, Switch bundle. I think I just said Switch twice, but I've only played it on the Wii and the Wii U Virtual Console versions. I've never played it on N64, so I don't know. I really want to someday. Like, I hope it's on my list of games to buy whenever we make our trip to Japan someday, But I would love to see it running on there. But
Thin Skull! Sorry,
Skull.
I've just suddenly remembered you were talking about glass and fragility and stuff like that, and I was like, I've got a little bit of information here. There's a law. I don't know if it's an American law, where you have to, sort of you take your victim as you find them. So if they're fragile, that's not an excuse. And it's called the thin skull law.
Was that one of the Indiana Jones films? Indiana Jones and the Thin Skull?
And the Kingdom of the Thin Skull. Or the legend of the Thin Skull. Yes, we're looking for the one with the thin skull. So Indy keeps running around and whacking people in the back of the head with his whip in hopes that one day someone will crack. Sir, I found it right here.
But yes, Sin and Punishment.
Yes, where was it? What was I? Oh, the other cool thing about Sin and Punishment that I didn't realize until yesterday, you could play this for the first time officially in a handheld format. You don't have to have a weird like portable Wii or something like that. You could play Sin and Punishment on the go. And I went to go pick up Fallon the other day from work after I'd finished my stream, and I just wanted to play just a bit more. And when I started playing on my Switch portably, I was like, this is so cool. Because this game has been basically locked to the Wii and the Wii U for so long, and of course the N64 too. But I think that's the one thing that I just...
The N64 too? What's that?
It's the one that we never got in America. That's why we could never play Sin and Punishment, of course.
All right.
Ah, gotcha.
But I think there's so many of the great N64 games that have made the jump over to like handhelds already in the past. Like we have Ocarina of Time, Majora's Mask, Super Mario 64, Star Fox, even 64 has made the jump. And Sin and Punishment is one of those games that it's just massive in scale in so many different ways. And I think it's just, I'm so glad that Nintendo took that one and decided to throw it into the catalog of the first games to come to Switch, because it really is. I feel like this is a great way to end the video, which I'm not sure if we're done chatting yet anyways, but it's just it's one of those games that everybody should play on the N64, I think, just because it's short, it's so crazy weird, and how you're going to lose like 2 hours of your life to it. Just do it. Like if you have the option, just play it.
Totally. And as you were saying, it's an amazing portable game. Like, let's say you're on a train journey, you can probably finish it in that journey, depending on where you're going to. The whole reason we're doing this video, really, is just kind of say, like, hey, play Sin and Punishment. I mean, the N64 lineup, the launch lineup, is pretty good. But I'm sure all of us have played these games time and time again. But Sin and Punishment is something I know many Nintendo fans have missed out on. And it really is. I'd say it's one of the coolest games Nintendo's ever published. And there's a sequel on Wii, which is just as cool as well. But this is your chance, this is your time to try Sin and Punishment. Do it. Now.
Yeah, I think it'd be good to go and challenge. And anybody who made it this far in the video, I think we should set a challenge for you. You should go out, play Sin and Punishment if you haven't already. Or if you have, okay, great, play it again. But then you should make it a goal for today to find somebody who has never played Sin and Punishment and convince them to play the game. Because I think now we should ask Alex, now that Alex is like... Since he was a first-time sinner, did you enjoy your time with the game? Do you feel like you lost it? Do you think?
Yeah, it was really good fun. It took a while to get my head around the control scheme because it's simultaneously so familiar, but it's just different enough that it throws you off. So you try and sort of, like you were saying, you try and do the twin sticks, what you can't do. You need to use a D-pad and a stick. So, sort of that definitely took some adjustment, and occasionally, like, I'd stop, sort of go into a menu, or I'd, I don't know, stroke a cat and go back to it, and I'd have to go sort of, oh God, which is the jump button? But that's all stuff you can learn, really very quickly. But yeah, I had an absolute blast. I had to stop myself so that we could record this, because I just wanted to keep playing it, because it was just absolute madcap, joyful nonsense. It's great.
What better way to describe it? So if you guys enjoyed this video, let us know in the comments below. And of course, go that subscribe button and just keep shooting it over and over again. Whack it a little. Just show it that it's a little sinner. And we'll see you next time. Bye everyone.
If you happen to be playing on easy mode and you get beat up a lot and you keep losing continues, don't give up. You'll get there eventually.
Get bonus.